are receiving, those are in practice in GST, receiving lot of notices from the department regarding assessments. So and so many small issues we are receiving notices. To address this session, we have with eminent speaker, senior member, none other than T.A. Rajesh Kumar sir. Welcome, Rajesh sir. We have also another speaker, is none other than the CA Rishabh Singhvi, is yet to join. This both Rajesh sir and Rishabh Singhvi will be going to address how we have to be get prepared for departmental notices, whether we need to address all the notices or not, how it is valid, how to address, how to give a reply. So many small and very critical issues will be there. They are going to discuss. Definitely after this session, it's a very value added session for you all, because a lot of members, they are receiving a lot of notices on GST. Generally, they will not be knowing how to address those notices, whether we have to address all the notices. So many issues. You can ask your question at the end of the session. Welcome, Mr. Rishabh.
Welcome, sir. Good evening, sir. Sorry for the delay in joining for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely no issue. We started now only. With this, once again, welcome you all for this very interesting session. I don't want to take much time, and I want to make an important announcement. December month, you have to complete your CP hours by end of December. So we are conducting lot of program. We have 16th, 17th, even 23, 24. We have a 2 days conference in the Devraj Arts Bhavan. Very interesting topics. I request all the members to register for all the programs and fulfill your CPA compliance. And we have already started online yoga classes for members and students. Lot of members joined and making use of that program. Still, those are interested to join your online yoga classes, you can join. With this, once again, I welcome you. I request our committee member Shripad to give a brief introduction of both the speakers. Over to Shripad.
Thank you, Chairman, sir. So it is my pleasure to introduce the speakers for the day, CA Rajesh Kumar TR and CA Rishabh Singhvi. So CA Rajesh Kumar TR, he is a BCom graduate, LLB, CA and DISA professional. He is a practicing chartered accountant, practicing in indirect taxes since 2002. Completed schooling, graduation, and CA articleship at Tumkur, and later moved into Bangalore. He is practicing in the field of indirect taxes at Bangalore for more than 20 years, conceptualizing the intricacies of businesses and law, and advising clients on compliances, tax planning, and representation to government and authorities. He is a partner at Venu and Vinay Chartered Accountants, and also proprietor at RKTR and Co Chartered Accountants. Was one of the senior partners at Hiregange and Associates Chartered Accountants for more than 17 years, and has created and was heading litigation wing of that firm for more than 15 years. Represented different clients before various statutory authorities, including customs, excise, service tax, settlement commission, anti-profiteering authorities, representing their cases. Has authored number of books on GST, central excise, service tax, KVAT, as author, joint author, as well as assisting author. Has contributed substantially for compilation and revision of study material on indirect taxes published by ICAI for CA final students. He has also contributed for background material on GST and UAE VAT published by ICAI. Has been training the professional students, industry, and departmental authorities in the field of indirect taxes on invitation from ICAI, ICSI, NASIN, tax departments of state and center, and various other educational bodies as well. Written many articles on central excise, service tax, VAT, and GST for various professional journals. So this is just a brief introduction of today's one of the speakers, CA Rajesh Kumar TR. And next we'll move on to the next speaker, Mr. CA Rishabh Singhvi. He is a qualified chartered accountant, company secretary, CFA, law graduate, and holding a bachelor's degree in commerce. Rishabh Singhvi graduated from St. Joseph's College of Commerce and has been a rank holder in all the professional and graduation examinations. He has secured the 31st rank in CA final, 18th rank in intermediate, 12th rank in CS final, and 25th rank in CS intermediate. Rishabh Singhvi has in a total of work experience of around 15 years in the field of taxation, working with multinational and corporate clients. Rishabh Singhvi has previously worked with E&Y, PwC, and Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan attorneys. Rishabh Singhvi, he is currently practicing as a partner in R. Singhvi and Associates in Bangalore, a premier firm in indirect taxation and direct taxation. He's a part of indirect tax committee of BCAS, and his articles on indirect tax are published in the respected BCAS journal as well. He has represented papers on GST at ICAI, Chamber of Commerce, professional forums, management institutions, and various trade circles. So with this brief introduction, I present to you CA Rishabh Singhvi. Over to you, CA Rajesh Kumar and CA Rishabh Singhvi.
Thank you, Srinivas, and thank you, Shripad. At the outset, I would like to thank Bangalore branch for giving us this wonderful opportunity of interacting with various members through this session and sharing of our experience, which can be of some assist to various member friends. And also I should especially thank Rishabh, who has come out with a different structure in which we thought we will go with this particular session, rather than merely being a normal talking, normal format of delivering a lecture. We thought that, we'll take it like a discussion forum, or rather question answer pattern, so that either of us will be taking one issue and asking a question about it. The other one will try to share their viewpoint, experience on that topic. And obviously, deeper into it we can go. In fact, at point in time, we may also try to quarrel with each other. May not happen. We may agree to disagree, or may try to debate, discuss. So obviously, to ensure that as much as possible, we go deeper into the particular issue or a topic, so that the members are benefited out of it. I think the pattern with which we thought I explain. Now that coming to the topic is nomenclated as preparedness for GST audit and GST notices. So when it comes to a preparedness, it is not merely we looking into merely a statutory provision, getting more into the practical side of it, and at the same time trying to see how we need to deal with the provisions of the statute when any notices comes or the audit officer comes, when the auditor questions that what is our rights, what is our duties, how we address all these aspects. We thought we'll discuss, and hopefully it will go the way we thought, and try to address that. I request now first Rishabh to just give a brief introduction about how we are going along. Then we will start with our discussion after that.
Thank you, Rajesh sir. I think it was your humility to give me credit for the structure. I was only the voice. You had the idea in your mind before I could only put it to you. So at the outset, firstly, I would like to thank our alma mater, the CA Institute Bangalore branch, Chairman sir, dignitaries, Srinivas sir, and of course all the participants. I'll take this opportunity for me to learn, and what I have as learned because of this opportunity, I can just share with the entire forum here. So therefore, it is my heartful thanks to my alma mater to give me this opportunity. and share the thoughts and experiences. Of course, we have seniors with us. Rajesh sir is going to give his opinion, because he has seen uh, a particular issue, or almost the legacy issues, right from its origination to its final conclusion, where he argues before the courts. So his experience is what will help us in this process, and I will give the insights from where I could view this proceeding panning out, and what it has already panned out, and what is going to pan out in the future. So this was basically the initial thoughts which I wanted to share. As regards the program structure, like Rajesh sir has mentioned, we have tried to have it more in the form of a discussion forum, where we will share thoughts. We will exchange. I will pose certain questions to Rajesh sir, which is out of my curiosity and as a representative of the participants. Of course, Rajesh sir, we will not let him off the hook until he answers those questions convincingly. And I will not let him off. And I think he's also going to do the same thing to me on some other portions of the topic. So to the best I will, otherwise I will bounce it back like a table tennis ball to Rajesh sir to give his inputs. So this is the program structure. We don't want any, we thought, we framed the questions actually. Rajesh sir and myself have jotted down our questions. So we have the structure in our mind. We didn't want to use a presentation and distract you from the attention, from the discussion. So that's why we thought we will make it as an oral discussion. I will put down my questions as a curiosity to Rajesh sir. So we have two portions. One is the audit and second is the adjudication. I think like Rajesh sir mentioned, he will pose down certain questions to me for audit, and of course give his inputs wherever he feels certain points have been missed. And adjudication, I will pose certain questions to Rajesh sir, and then we can all arrive at a particular approach to this entire process. And I think sir, the questions we will take it in the end, sir, or should we split it, audit and adjudication?
I think what I was thinking was probably once we complete with the audit portion, we will stop and invite all the questions relating to that. Then after that, as far as the adjudication is concerned, once we come to a stage of all the legal provision, powers, duties, we'll stop it. Then after that, when we go into how to reply, what are all the things we need to keep in mind, when completing that portion, we can obviously come back and ask the questions again. So I think that's what we can do.
Yeah. So I request the participants to keep posting their questions on the Q&A so that we have a record.
Yeah.
And we take it up. So the initial portion can be towards audit only, and then adjudication you can hold it on once Rajesh sir begins his talk.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yes.
I think thanks, Rishabh, for making that clear. Now, firstly, the topic, as I was mentioning, is the audit, then adjudication related thing. Firstly, before getting into this audit or adjudication, I thought it appropriate for us to understand the departmental hierarchy, so that when we talk about something about some officer, etc., then members should not be in a dark that or thinking that who it is, what it is it cadet. So Rishabh, can I ask you, can you just elaborate a departmental hierarchy, one from the center perspective, then from the state perspective, for us to be very, very clear in our further discussions?
Sir, you sent me into nostalgia. When I was an article,
okay,
I went to the department first time, okay, not knowing what is a commissioner, what is an assistant commissioner, who's an additional commissioner. And I had one of the most memorable experience and this was when I was looking at income tax. There was a section in income tax which gives the hierarchy, just like section 3 in our GST. There is an hierarchy even in the income tax, and I was in the income tax department. I called an additional commissioner as an assistant commissioner, not knowing the repercussions and the seriousness of the hierarchy actually. So it was a big learning for me as an article. And that's why, the articleship is so important, that you don't make mistakes when you are a qualified professional. You can make all the mistakes in your articleship and then you're a well-groomed professional when you're qualifying it. So that was a snippet I thought I'll share. So coming back, like we know in GST, we have 2 field formations, and this is for the first time. It's an experiment in India where there are 2 independent administrations who are going to work towards a common goal. Okay. Now, remember, even though they are 2 independent cadres, what we call them, they have the common goal of collecting CGST, SGST, or IGST, whatever we may call. I will not go into the topic of cross empowerment and assigning jurisdiction because that's not the topic for today. But we need to appreciate that this field formation or administration is for the first time, and it's a wonderful experiment to my knowledge, has not taken place across the globe, sir. Please correct me if I'm wrong, sir. But across the globe, this has not taken place. And I think we need to pat ourselves on the back, at least till now, for this experiment where 2 independent administrations are going to adjudicate or administer a law which is towards a single objective. Now, coming from a center's perspective, which was administering the excise law, the VAT, the excise, the service tax, and of course the customs law separately, you have an administration which starts with a CC, which is called the Principal Chief Commissioner. Then you have the Chief Commissioner. So you have a Principal Chief Commissioner, PCC, what we generally call. You have the CC, which we generally call the Chief Commissioner. Then you have a Principal Commissioner who is there below in the hierarchy. Below that, you have the Additional Commissioner and the Joint Commissioner. For our purposes, we somewhere treat them at par. You have the Assistant Commissioners or the DCs, the ACs or the DCs. Then you have the Superintendents and the Inspector. So this is the chain of command for the Central Excise Administration, and this is there in the Act also. I will not go into the field formation of the Director General, DGGI, DGGSTI. I mean, it's understood, but generally it starts with the Principal Chief Commissioner, the Chief Commissioner, then you have the Commissioner, Additional Joint Commissioners, which are, I would treat them, although they have different pay scales or cadres and promotions independently in their department, for our purposes, generally we treat them at par. Then you have the ACs or DCs, what we call Assistant Commissioners, Deputy Commissioners, Superintendents, and the Inspectors. Now for the entire Bangalore and Goa region, we will have one PCC. You will have separate CCs depending upon the region, Mangalore, Karnataka, Bangalore, etc. And then below the CCs, you will have in Bangalore, at least Karnataka, we can speak, you have commissionerates. You have the West, North, Northwest, East, and South, 5 commissionerates. So each commissioner is being charged of each of a commissionerate. And then you have the field formation below that. So this is how the central works. This is how similarly it used to work even under the Central Excise law and the service tax law, right? And all are of the IRS cadre. Under the state, okay, it's a slightly different, a slightly shorter chain of command, of course, because of the VAT laws. You have the commissioner who is actually an IAS cadre officer actually. Then you have the additional commissioners who have been given different charges. Additional, then you have, but they are not more, they are not so much into the, what do you say, implementation of the law, but they are more into an administrative role is what I have seen. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. You have the joint commissioners, which are more into the legal proceedings and who are involved in all the proceedings under the law. So you have commissioner, additional commissioners, joint commissioners. Then you have the ACs and DCs under the VAT department who are actually doing the table work or the documentation proceedings, etc. And then you have, of course, CTOs, what we call commercial tax officers. And then, of course, there will be some outsourced staff also. So this is broadly. So if you see it as a difference, there's a shorter chain of command there. And whenever we look at the law, we need to be critical or careful of whether the person who is the proper officer, if fits into the chain of command and is the person who has been assigned that power. So we need to go back to that, but we will take that up on a different day. Today is only the chain of command.
Appropriately explained, Rishabh. In fact, you did brought out a good point that, administrative vis-a-vis is actually on the field, on the job. Though there's a longer chain, even the central tax, to sync with the same cadre as far as the designation is concerned with the state. Even the center also, though there are so many higher ups, they're all been only for the purpose of administrative things rather than things. So effectively in the GST law, in fact, at one point in time, one of the commissioners was mentioning, see, we do not have any much role to play in the GST. We are merely office sitting and watching and giving reports only is our job, was the commissioner's response for one of our general casual discussion we were having. So I think that way there is a little of a change in the powers which used to be there in the service tax regime as against the, when we come to adjudication, probably we'll touch upon that, who can do what, etc.
Yes,
and I think the next point, though not straight away getting into it, many a times when I actually talk to many clients or chartered accountants or for that matter, these tax practitioners, the question comes in, sir, who can go and appear? Can I go and appear in audit proceedings? What is the, whether I do have a right to appear, whether am I authorized to appear? So these questions do come, especially from the perspective of a chartered accountant. Am I, can I represent a client in an audit proceedings? Representing the client, especially making reference to, the authorized representative definition, which is there in 116.
Yes.
You would like to address that, Rishabh, or?
Sir, actually very interesting question. We have been appearing, but honestly, even I am reading this for the first time.
Okay. So out of syllabus question.
It is your speciality. You have picked a very fine point.
Yeah.
But like you rightly said, sir, section 116, which permits certain persons to appear. And the provision says that for any proceeding under the Act, a chartered accountant or a GST practitioner can appear. Of course, you have certain retired officers also who can appear for this proceeding. And in the previous, what you need to do is have a simple authorization. In fact, we used to have under the VAT law, a VAT 515, if I'm not wrong.
555, 555,
555, yeah, correct. 555, we used to that. But under GST, there's no format as such. So a simple letter is what, sir, this is a question. I had a question, sir, and one of the officers said that you have to get a stamped power of attorney. Is that legally required, sir?
Not required. In fact, the similar question came up before the tribunal. When I was representing one of the cases before the tribunal, actually it was being accepted normal authorization, a green sheet paper with the format, the general format. One of the member came from Delhi and he raised, I think you are not giving the stamp. So you are actually effectively making a loss to the state exchequer. In fact, at that time, I did add an occasion to examine. There's a difference between a power of attorney vis-a-vis an authorization. In fact, I understand that income tax, you do execute a power of attorney in a stamp paper. In fact, after examination, we found that there is no such requirement. Reading together the Karnataka Stamp Act, read with the Indian Stamp Act, all those provisions, there's no such requirement. In fact, there's a requirement of a judicial stamp, which could be that's the court fee stamp sort of a thing, which you say. But in Karnataka, there's an exemption up to certain limit. After that, you need to go get. So by virtue of that, also we are exempted. So in Karnataka, as I've examined, there's no requirement of the authorization to be in a stamp paper.
Oh, wonderful, sir. I mean, we face these questions. And I mean, we get away mostly with it, but it's a good, food for thought you've given us. And we can confidently answer now the officer that we have examined the Stamp Act.
Correct.
Yes.
One more thing, this in authorized representative, I want to bring out a couple of important points. Being a professional, when we go, we should not be in a back foot, because many a times the officer uses this as a weapon to put us down. Where's your authorization? Are you representative? Authorization is incorrect and all those things. So if we are clear with, what is the provision talks about. In
Correct.
fact, the provision, a practicing chartered accountant, but not a firm of chartered accountants.
Okay.
So authorization should not be in the firm name. It should be in that particular chartered accountant name.
Okay.
Maybe you can use so-and-so, partner so-and-so,
Okay.
but the authorization cannot be in the firm name. So that is
So
the one
what
point.
if there is a big firm with multiple chartered accountants and things where it's not one person who represents? So can I club all those authorizations?
Yeah, no. There generally they say Rishabh, Rajesh,
Correct.
Srinivas,
Correct.
Madhu, all those things they put comma, and they also supposed to accept. If you
Correct.
see authorization from an advocate's office, you will find it. Though
Correct.
they would have formed as a legal firm, but the authorization will cover individually all the names of the advocate. Similarly, here also it should be in the individual name, not in the firm name. And many a times, if you technically, just for information, who goes and represent called group CEO, group CFO. But actually the section talks about a employee, regular employee. It does not. So other than that, they are not actually, if they are not an employee of that company who is outsourced CFO concept which is going on, how to address that, they need to be careful about it. If somebody asks, because something committing, you are giving a statement, how do you represent? Though this may not be looked at seriously, but sometimes legally, if somebody takes up, it may have a challenges. So I thought I'll just bring out this important points when we go and represent. Before that, the authorization and appearance before the audit. I thought I'll just bring out this aspect of it. Yeah. Coming to the next thing. Anyhow, it's a very, very silly and simple question. Departmental audit is the topic. How many types of departmental audit is possible?
So, sir, actually, just to broad base this question of yours. Generally, when we talk about audit, the impression is audit is one which a taxpayer, a chartered accountant does in the form of a GST audit. I would treat this GST audit as a misnomer. What we are doing currently as practicing chartered accountants assisting clients in the form of filing 9 and 9C is actually a management service. Prior to a couple of years, we were certifying it. There, we were not performing an audit, we were performing a certification, if you ask me, actually, because we were not really issuing an opinion on this aspect. So this GST audit, which we use is a misnomer. I would put it in that sense. And in fact, the board has also come out in its press release that you are not certifying the entire tax liability of a auditee, what we call. You are only, as a chartered accountant, certifying whether the reconciliation is in sync with the books of accounts. So as chartered accountants, we don't need to take a position on behalf of the client. The decision has been taken by the client. We have to only certify if the questions are, whether the numbers are matching with the financials and there is no deviation. So that's one set of audit under GST. Second is the department regular audit. Sir, again, this is again, what do you say, history of what we used to call audit under the central excise, the SERA and the service tax audit. In VAT, we used to call it as assessment. In central excise, we used to call it as audit. Now in GST, in fact, in central excise, and there was no codified VAT audit procedure. It was in the form of an audit manual, sir, to what I could understand. Service tax, there was a rule which gave some powers for the regular audit. So as such, there was nothing in law codified under the parent enactment on audit. So for the first time, there is under section 65 of GST where they have codified it. And you know, there is this history. We have this where in Delhi High Court and others, people have challenged the service tax audit. I think it's an outcome of that where they have codified the provisions itself in the parent enactment. So it's a broad base process where the government starts with an empty slate. It does not have any issue in mind, but it just wants to verify the books of accounts and whether the taxes are duly paid. In fact, there is a definition of audit under section 2, which somewhere gives the scope for what an audit is. So if I have to break up that definition, it is examination of the records and arriving at the correct tax liability. This is what they have stated. So that's a regular audit. Those who have been practicing VAT will call it assessment. Both I would treat it at par actually. The only difference is assessment, there used to be a time limit under VAT law. Audit, interestingly, there is no outer time limit or for initiating an audit or closing an audit in terms of a time limitation. There is a time limit for closure from initiation, but as such, there is no time limit under section 65. That's one very interesting point which we will ponder over later on during the course of discussion. So that's the second type of audit. There's a third type of audit, which is a special audit. This is there even under income tax. Sir, I'm not sure whether it was there under central excise, sir, on VAT. I don't remember. I don't think it was there.
It was there. Central excise, it is nothing but borrowed from a central excise, section 14.
Correct. So basically where the department believes that it needs an expert assistance. You know, if you're auditing a company like TCS, where, you know, the data is so voluminous and the department may not be having the, I would say, the skill, or they do not have the wherewithal or the software expertise to manage such a mammoth software. Or if it's a complicated business model where it takes time, so they may appoint a chartered accountant. In fact, recently the commissioner of sales tax, state tax had issued a expression of interest for empanelment of chartered accountants for special audit. In fact, quite recently. So you can get empaneled and assist. The department takes the assistance of chartered accountants because of the skill we possess in terms of understanding accounting systems, accounting softwares, systems audit, and they will provide the chartered accountant the parameters or the broad scope of examination within which the chartered accountant operates. So it's a special audit where the chartered accountant reports to the proper officer, who then finalizes his conclusion, right? So it's like, if you recollect, if we all have gone to the passport office, you have an outsourced team which verifies all your records, and then you have a regional passport officer who finally signs off depending upon the records of what has been put up by the outsourced office, and the passport issuing authority is the regional passport officer. So in similar terms, a special audit is an outsourced function because of the competence it requires, the assignment requires, and then the special auditor reports to the proper officer for final conclusion. So these are the three broad types of audit under GST which I can envisage. Rajesh, sir.
I think in between you did mention that assessment or an audit.
Correct.
So I think I would like to ask you a question. At the same time, I may pitch in later. Please, what is the difference between audit, assessment, investigation, vis-a-vis adjudication?
Sir, I just scraped through in my audit paper. I remember Murli sir used to be there.
Okay.
He says, as an auditor, you're only a watchdog. You're not a bloodhound. So it reminds me of that.
True,
Okay,
true,
so
true.
and this is the only thing I remember in my auditing paper. After that, I have not studied auditing.
From the audit perspective, section 65 vis-a-vis assessment,
Correct.
vis-a-vis investigation, vis-a-vis the adjudication.
Fair enough. So I'll address that point. So audit, again, is a borrowed from the central excise law, where you examine the books of accounts. That's very critical. You have to assess the liability based on what the records are stating. And investigation, on the other hand, is going beyond the records. So, you go into whether there is a, let's say, excess utilization of electricity versus the production. You go into an investigating mode where you see external circumstances. You obtain, points of reference from suppliers, from customers, whether this person is doing a clandestine removal, whether he's into bill trading, fake invoicing. So where you are focused on focus on assessing evasion of tax, versus audit is more focusing on compliance of whether whatever taxes are reported, what is available on the face of the record, is it in accordance with legal provisions. So that's the approach in investigation and audit. So the powers of investigation are different, the powers of audit are different. An audit officer should not become an investigating officer. In law, he doesn't have the powers, I believe so. An investigating officer is more focused or a centric approach on whether there is evasion, and he doesn't finally conclude it. He passes on the report for an audit or an adjudication. That's how I would really perceive it.
Okay.
And adjudication, we will address it whenever you take that portion, sir. So assessment, I missed that last point. So assessment is more, I would, correct me if I'm wrong, is more parallel to audit. It is more a VAT concept where you assess the liability based on what is available on record, and you complete it in terms of compliance. You really don't go into an investigative mode of getting external evidences or doing an independent back-end inquiry with third parties and then cross-examining. Generally, I have not seen that in assessment proceedings. And if it does that, that's the role of investigating officers, sir. This is how I would perceive it.
I think just to put in a very, very simpler manner, not getting into a too much technical, I always think this assessment officer will say, bring everything. This actual assessment is a reassessment, because you would have done a self-assessment. They reassess your correctness of the tax.
Correct.
And he will determine and quantify pass order.
Correct.
Whereas in audit, he only gives a report.
Correct.
Based on the observations.
True.
Whereas in an investigation, it is directed based on some intelligence, etc., focusing of one of the issue. First and second is for a period. Third is for an issue.
Certainly.
And when it comes to adjudication, there is a predetermined amount as per their doubt, supported by evidence, which they want to give you opportunity to confirm their understanding and give you opportunity. So these are broadly the differences which we know, because I think many of us in practically, when we look at it, we generally get confused when using these terms, because recently we got one notice. The officer said, so I have been authorized by so and so for carrying out an adjudication under section 73.
Okay.
For the period so and so, for all the individual separate notes for each period. Okay. Therefore, you bring in the following records.
Oh my God.
So you actually, that particular thing is in not line. It is neither in the actually it is in the nature of audit, but the provisions, etc., being quoted are of adjudication.
Correct.
So rather than simply going ahead and submitting, let's be clear with what exactly is the authority, etc. Now, having talked about authority, I would like to ask you, for the purpose of audit, who can be the jurisdiction officer? When do they select us? Who appoints them? In that line, can you just throw some light?
Fair enough, sir. So, sir, if I have to talk from a central tax perspective, you have an audit commissionerate which has been constituted. The commissioner heads this audit commissionerate. Under law, the commissioner can, by way of a general or a special order, authorize the audit. Now, a general order does not mean audit any of the taxpayers of your choice. A general order, in fact, means that he gives the parameters based on which the taxpayers can be selected. So you may select based on certain risk assessment parameters which the commissioner lays down. Then the joint commissioners or the assistant commissioners, through their DGRM or their statistics, see who meets those parameters and issue the audit authorization. Or it could be a special authorization. So let's say DGGI issues a report and sends it to the audit commissionerate, or anti-evasion prepares a report and sends it to the audit commissionerate, or even the range could send a report to the audit commissionerate and say perform this audit. So, or even the commissioner can suo motu do this. Any of these possibilities in the background can result in an issuance of a special order for auditing a particular taxpayer. So that's from the central tax administration perspective. From a state administration perspective, the commission, generally what we have seen is the commissioner has authorized the joint commissioners to issue audit assignments, and the joint commissioners, based on their parameters through their software, issue specific audit assignments to the DC audits or the commercial tax officer audits who perform the audits. And there is an audit assignment which is being issued. In fact, we've seen that assignment numbers are also quoted while doing the audit before the taxpayer. So here the joint commissioner generally performs that function based on a authorization by the commissioner. That's generally how we see. So when we are approached with an audit notice, generally I've seen officers are sharing the copy of the audit assignment by the joint commissioner. So central tax officers mention that in their ADT 1. So if that's there and if there is a copy, I think that should be sufficient for our records. If not, we can seek a copy of that.
Yeah, I think as far as the who can be selected, fine. Again, when we actually see the provision in section 65, I observed that there are two different words which are used. One is authorized officer.
Correct.
Other one is a proper officer.
Correct.
Till the process of completion of an audit, it is using a word authorized.
Correct.
Whereas for issue of a ADT 02, that is in the final audit report, it is using a word proper officer.
True.
So I actually, when I read the provision initially, I thought it all the audit wing is going to carry out an audit, give their observation with after considering the reply of the assessee to the jurisdictional proper officer, who will in fact is going to issue the audit report in ADT 02. That is what was my initial understanding. But when I read the rules have mixed up the aspect of this authorized officer vis-a-vis a proper officer, and everywhere it has used the word proper officer. So though I don't know whether it is really making sense, though the conceptually the objective, as I understood, was to keep the audit wing independent of the adjudication wing so that they are not biased.
Correct.
But actually, with the way things are happening, there is no such distinction which I am finding. So this is, in fact, we are seeing at many of the state audits, the person who has done audit is also carrying out an adjudication proceedings. To what extent it's right, wrong, we'll discuss later, but I'm telling just to note this particular point. You want to add
it's
something?
Unfortunate, sir. Actually, this is like, in fact, we discussed this point with the joint commissioner also, saying that in state, if you are the one who is performing the audit and the adjudication, then the adjudication is meaningless because you've already formed a conclusion.
Correct.
And there is certainly going to be a person who has concluded is not going to reverse his conclusion in an adjudication. So it becomes more like a paper proceeding. I think of late, at least I have seen now, recently, they are assigning the 73 adjudication and 74 adjudication proceedings to a parallel officer is what I have seen in some more of the recent matters. But I don't know if other divisions are also addressing this issue.
But I am still finding the same thing. Yeah. In fact, one more point I think I missed asking you. The I have seen, since we talked about a state, generally the pattern which is happening, that some vigilance will go,
Yes.
find out something, find a report, and determine some tax non-payment, short payment, vis-a-vis the central, DGGI or a preventive wing goes and identifies some non-payment, short payment. I found that there are two different practices. Have you come across, and if so, can you please explain?
Yes, sir. So, like you rightly said, VAT, the state and administration is, and I would say to that extent they are right also, is consolidating the reports from the enforcement or vigilance uh, at the joint commissioner who is heading that division. And the joint commissioner then, by way of an assignment, forwards this report to the audit officer to consider while completing his audit. So generally, we've been told, and in fact, there was no power with the enforcement or vigilance to independently conduct a adjudication proceeding. This is also in line with their practice, which they were doing under the VAT law as well. Since reassessment was being done by audit authorities, all the reports were consolidated with that audit authority, and then a holistic assessment was being performed, keeping in mind whatever material has been gathered by the other field formations. In center, like you rightly said, we have seen instances where the audit wing is parallelly performing an audit proceeding, but anti-evasion has already issued a show cause notice and commenced adjudication on certain intelligence-based information and reports which they have collected. We are also seeing this in the case of DGGI, where DGGI has also, because they have now been empowered to issue the show cause notices, they have been also initiating 73 proceedings irrespective of this. Now, whether this will, is it permissible? I did have an occasion, and I wanted your inputs on this also. Is parallel proceedings, of course, maybe on different issues, permissible? Is audit a culmination of all issues, or can it be independent, dehorse and intelligence based information? Is one input I wanted from you. So
Okay,
I can give you a sample case study then for the benefit of the participants. So, and it's a case study which I have also experienced. DGGI investigated a case of clandestine in a particular taxpayer. They've issued a report and they have found some evasion. They have issued a 73 proceeding. Before DGGI, there was an audit notice which was already issued, but audit was not concluded. Now, of course, as a taxpayer, he has not informed the audit that something like this happened, and neither has DGGI informed the audit commissionerate. Here, audit has been done and audit has also been completed, identifying certain other proceedings. Now, the DGGI, now the range has an audit report with certain observations, the central range, and DGGI has issued a show cause notice. So this gamut of facts, what do you believe? Is it something which is in sync with the law, or is it better in how else should the tax department manage this?
Yeah, I think probably my earlier explanation about the difference between audit, investigation, vis-a-vis, the assessment. In fact, why state was following that procedure? Because assessment was a period based.
Correct.
They could not have been a multiple proceedings for a one period. So everything had to culminate back into audit for a reassessment proceedings for a particular period.
Correct.
But whereas in central excise, etc., there was no concept of audit, it was always an adjudication proceeding.
Correct.
So it was an issue based. Even in an audit, if there is a multiple issues which comes up, we have seen that, for each issue, there can be a separate show cause notices.
Even though the periods are overlapping.
Periods are same. Periods
Correct.
are same. So in fact, legally, is it right? Because 73 is for a short payment, not payment of a particular tax. It is not a period based. It is not necessary that it should be culminate into one period, one proceedings. So looking from that perspective, I think the process and procedure of a center is fine and well tested and being followed for decades now. Second, audit is not necessarily a must.
Yes.
Okay. Whereas in an earlier regime, assessment was a must, yes, for a particular period.
Right.
So they had to push the data for that assessment. In a adjudication, I mean, you may not be selected at all for audit. In fact, how many of us who are within the service tax regime are never audited?
True, true.
If until unless you're filing your returns correctly, you're not coming out in that data selection process. Now, so audit may come, may not come. Investigation, whenever they found that there is a short payment, they can initiate 70-74. Again, the scope of audit is leading to 73. 73 is not leading to the audit. So I think that way both are independent and it's a issue-based, tax-based, and need not be a period-based.
So, sir, will I be correct in saying you may have one audit, but it is possible to have multiple adjudications?
Yes. Agreed.
So that's I would be okay in saying that, right, sir?
Yes. Because
I cannot have multiple audits for the same period.
Yes.
But I can have multiple adjudications from different authority, from different issues.
Yeah. Anyway, I think you talked about multiple. So suddenly it caught me. Whether you as a central officer, being a jurisdictional officer, I've been assigned to you, then there is a state officer where as they have that practice, whenever some vigilance happens, they refer to audit.
Correct.
Okay. So they went for a vigilance. I am under this center jurisdiction.
Correct.
You are doing audit or done audit.
Correct.
But there's also vigilance report.
Correct.
So now can also they come out and carry out an audit under section 65 again?
Correct. So, sir, like you said, this is a very relevant issue. We are facing this. Now, just to take a step back, initially, the thought process of the council was to demarcate the taxpayer base with a Chinese wall. That was the initial idea which was set up before the implementation of GST. And that was the mandate which was given, is what I am told.
True.
But I think over 2017-18, there was this instruction which was issued, and GST Council also took a decision that intelligence-based or enforcement-based action can be taken up by any of the administrators. That is, state can even take up intelligence-based or enforcement-based examination of a state taxpayer base, or vice versa. Center can take up state, state can take up center. So that was there, and we expected, okay, no problem. Whatever information you collect, you should then transfer it to the relevant administration who you are assigned to. In fact, sir, I must tell you this curious thing. The GST portal, when we used to put down the GST number, there used to be jurisdictional officer, which used to be in red, and there used to be other officer. That is how it used to be.
Even now it is there.
Sir, now curiously, they have removed the word jurisdictional officer. They are calling it administrative officer and other officer.
Okay.
So there has been a development in the portal. Like, like other feature, you have the portal first, then you have the law which is going to address it.
Yes.
So this is some tip which I can share to you.
Okay, good.
So this is a very visible change which is there actually.
Yeah.
So finally, concluding my point, there is one more instruction has come out which says that if an intelligence-based information has been received and taken up, and action has been taken up by a particular administration, it could be a state assigned taxpayer, but center has taken up an intelligence-based action, has formed a report. The instruction says that that particular issue should be taken to its logical end only by the center, and that report will not be handled by the state. This is the administrative instruction. So now, going by that administrative instruction, audit as such under the parent enactment it can be taken up by who has initiated enforcement is what I can perceive.
Okay.
I mean, I want to know, is there any way out we can challenge this?
No, I think the instruction says only that issue, but not audit of everything.
Correct.
Okay. So the problem why I brought out this is, as you rightly pointed out, in the state administration, the adjudication powers are not given to the enforcement people.
Yes.
They have found out it, but they can't do anything because they are not audit officers.
Correct.
So that is where I brought out this point. Technically, a central jurisdiction person who is being audited or eligible for audit by the center, but a vigilance visit has happened from them, they should go for adjudication. That issue should be assigned directly to adjudication, cannot be routed through audit. So that is a.
Is there any provision which bars them, sir, to do an audit? I couldn't find, sir.
No, I am telling that the assignment of administrative power, audit comes under that administrative power, is what is the understanding which is given by the council. It is not an investigation based thing. Otherwise, then there's no everything, every aspect, there's no bar, so they can also pitch in.
Sir, I was reading section 6.2.
6.2 is debarring
It
other.
says it debars only on a particular subject matter.
Correct.
So if somebody has taken the first step on, let's say, particular subject matter, let's say clandestine, and that too clandestine of a particular unit, then it only debars that particular subject matter vis-a-vis all other officers.
True.
So the other administration center is still open to take up any other subject matter.
I tend
That's
to.
what I could perceive.
No, I tend to differ from that, because otherwise that entire assignment notification becomes redundant.
Okay, correct. True, sir. That's the. So I think the council is minutes, and that assignment is what we may have to fall back upon if we want to.
1/18.
Yes.
Okay, right. I think now we spoke about the jurisdiction, what type of audit. So then coming into what are all the areas they can pitch in audit. Is there anything which they need to be their doors are closed for anything specifically, or they can ask anything and everything when they come up?
Sir, for this, I would like to, it's a very interesting point which you have raised. I would like to read the definition of audit, sir, for the benefit of all the participants also, and for my benefit also. 213. I'll break up the definition into 3 parts, sir. Audit means examination of records, returns, and any other document maintained or furnished by the registered person under this act or under any other law. That is one part of the definition. For what purpose? To verify the correctness of turnover, taxes paid, refund claimed, and input tax credit. So that's the second portion. So you can verify documents, records, returns, etc. maintained under this law or under any other law. For what purpose? To verify the correctness of turnover declared, refund, ITC availed. And finally, what to do? To assess his compliance under the provision of this act or rules thereunder. So 2-3 questions came up in my mind on this aspect. Can the audit officer say, I want to physically verify your stock? So is it in the domain of investigation or is it in the domain of audit? That's, I think we go back to that fundamental point. Because let's say I have 10 laptops as my stock in my books. And I have and he wants to say, no, I want to visit your godown and want to physically verify this stock. That was one question which came up in my mind. To give you another example, can he do a fixed asset verification? Whether he can ask for all these fixed assets to be verified physically is the second question. Third, can he, go into, let's say loose papers, slips of papers, and say whether this is also, part of the audit proceeding. Whether he can go into that aspect is another aspect. Sir, what I could understand from the definition of audit, which defines the scope, is that whatever records are maintained for the purpose prescribed under law and prescribed under any other law, including the financial statement, is the only area which the audit officer can go. physical inspection verification of stock or fact is not within the domain of audit, is how I would perceive. I happen to look at the audit manual. Actually, the commercial tax department has also issued an audit manual, and even in 2019 the CBIC has issued an audit manual. I mean, I don't see a bar there, but I couldn't see a specific authorization to the audit commissionerate or the audit team to perform such stock verification or clandestine verification, etc. So, sometimes when we face these audit office, I have come across, they ask questions like, you have shown, too much credit vis-a-vis your output. Your credit is much more than output. What is the reason? So I think there we can, ask them to say that we don't have to give an explanation to meet their statistical, benchmarks. What we need to do is only present our ITC register and output register. It is not our onus or responsibility to feed them with, statistics and meet their statistical benchmark, is what I would believe. So to conclude my point, I don't think it is within the domain of audit to perform these physical stock verifications, loose slip, matching your power output with, your production, or even asking for, I don't know, sir, this is a question I have for you, sir. Can they send a sample to a laboratory and ask for reports? Can an audit team do that? So when Central Excise for Classification Tax Department used to do that. So do you think, is it within the domain? Exactly. Given the definition of audit.
You actually brought out the aspects very clearly. The scope of audit is different from a scope of investigation or inquiry. If they found any doubt, that can be referred for inquiry or investigation.
Correct.
In fact, and the scope of 67 is wider to cover all these aspects, whatever you mentioned. It is not there within section 65 is what my view also, because as you rightly pointed out, their scope is confined to records, returns, and documents.
Yes.
Records, returns, documents, 3 words.
That's it.
And not going beyond that, whether those are furnished under this act or any other act, maintained or furnished, both. So I think if anything is beyond that, if they're trying to ask, etc., probably I think they are going beyond that scope, which entitles us to question that, not to go beyond that. In fact, in this context, I did mention 65 can lead to 67, 67 cannot lead to 65.
Okay.
What the state are doing.
Okay.
That is where technically there's a problem in their entire approach. Looking at the mandate and the gamut of the provisions of section 65 read with 67, the entire mechanism of the state which presently adopted, in my view, I may be wrong, but in my understanding analysis, I think is not meeting the purpose and objective and the gamut of the way the provisions are designed.
Sir, only thing I would, here I'm going to quarrel with you.
Yeah, please.
I will believe that 67 can also lead to 65, and 65 may also lead to 67 in this particular scenario. So I think I'll take a more conservative approach as a chartered accountant.
No, provided they can work within their scope.
True.
Of recording, seeing only records.
True.
If they want to go beyond records, obviously only option 67. That's what is
correct. True. Sir, I had a question in my mind for you now. Transition credit. It is admittedly not input tax credit under GST.
Okay.
Input tax credit. And now you look at the definition of audit. It says correctness of turnover declared. Transition credit doesn't fall there. Taxes paid, it's not output tax. Refund claimed, it's not a refund claim. ITC availed, it is not ITC availed. Can audit officers question you on transition credits in audit proceeding?
You know Trishanku, right?
Sorry?
Trishanku.
Huh.
In the historical, there come Trishanku, neither here nor there.
Correct.
So transitional credit is like that. It is neither old one nor the new one. Okay. So, and until unless some judicial forums are going to come out and actually render their judgment, it is of this character. till then, taking conservative view, we might have to say that it is in the nature of ITC because we are utilizing that towards the payment of the GST taxes. So in fact, I think there's also a rule, if I'm not mistaken, I think 121 or something like rule,
Yes.
which
117.
talks about verification of the credit, transitional credit.
True,
So
true.
probably I think to that extent, we have to, if you want to fight, you can fight, but be conscious of that rule. That's all.
Sir, it says amount credited under 117 shall be verified and proceedings under 73 or 74 may be initiated.
Yeah.
So they have not given reference to 65 there, sir.
The 65 there, but verification can happen of a data furnished under this act.
True, true.
Yeah, I'm telling, just extending to that particular.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think
Next-
interesting point, sir.
Next point, Rishabh, is about the time limit aspect. There is something about commencement, when commencement, period of within which audit, when a report has to be issued, vis-a-vis when they need to complete. Can you just talk about that aspect of it?
Yes, sir. So, sir, section 65, like I said, there is no outer time limit to initiate an audit. It can be initiated at any point of time. Logically, they will have to initiate it to enforce the demand and recovery within the limit of 73, 74. So logically, they'll have to do that, which was there.
Otherwise, operation successful, patient dead.
Patient dead. Correct. You are right. So, so that's the, I mean, that's how we'll have to implicitly understand the time limit of initiation. That is point one. Second thing, once it is initiated, the question comes up is in what time you should conclude an audit. So there are three time limits, you have to put it 3 points of time which we need to remember: commencement, conclusion, issuance of audit report. I think the law talks about 3 different definite time limits. Now, curiously, sir, this is where the officers are also somewhere extending the law a little bit, and I wanted your legal assistance on this. Commencement of audit is defined under section 65.
Correct.
Okay. Conclusion, the course of audit is also set. Conclusion is, and they have to complete that audit once commencement within 3 months.
Correct.
Now, what the commencement audit is defined as date on which records are sought for, or physical visit to your premises if applicable, whichever is later. But it also says that the date on which these records are made available to the tax authorities, that will be the starting point from when 3 months clock starts ticking.
True.
Now, what officers are interpreting is, I would have started my audit in February 21. I have sought some information. They have been given a standard template. You submit, let's say, a diligent taxpayer submits all the information. Now, for some reason, they don't conclude the audit in 3 months, which is naturally the case which we are all facing. So to extend this time limit to what they're saying, they say, okay, we'll seek more information from you. Obviously, no list is exhaustive and information can never be exhausted. So they seek repeated information or they seek some fresh information. And then they say the time limit has restarted again for commencement. Now, this is one practical challenge which we are all facing. I'll just complete my point and then I would hear your input, sir. Then there's something called course of audit. During the course of audit, he verifies the records, he verifies all the information which we have already submitted. And once that is done, he's supposed to conclude his audit within 30 days from the completion of audit. He is supposed to issue an audit report. So, sir, now the question which I have for you and I wanted your inputs on this is, how do we understand commencement? Can we understand it as whenever they seek information, there is commencement? If partial information is submitted, should we understand commencement only when we have met all the information to the satisfaction of the officer? Because no officer is satisfied with the information. So how do we understand commencement? And second, if for whatever reason, this time limit is breached, what is the consequence under law? These are the 2 questions, sir.
Okay. I invite your attention firstly to 65 subsection 2 before reading the explanation.
Okay.
Commencement of audit. It talks about the officers referred in subsection 1 may conduct audit at the place of business of the registered person or in their office.
Yes.
So it is talking about two different situations.
Okay.
Okay. Now you read that explanation.
Okay.
It is talking about the date on which records and other documents called for by the authorities are made available by the registered person.
Yes.
Or the actual institution of the audit, the place of business, whichever is later. I read the second part is applicable for a visit audit.
Okay.
The first portion is applicable for the desk audit.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, why was there a necessity of the second part?
Correct.
You are effectively making the second part redundant. The commencement of the audit at the premises of the person visit, whenever that institution, that becomes redundant if you are, after having visited, you are waiting for them to produce the documents. Then where is the question of that part being coming? There was no necessity. They would have simply stopped at that. Whenever you give all the documents, from then only it commences.
True.
So first thing is, once they have asked you the list of documentation for desk audit, and you have produced all those documents, over, audit should commence. It is not a repeated exercise of they calling, you submitting further. So a question of further things will not come in.
Okay. So you're saying commencement is only one, you cannot have back and forth.
Yes. Commencement once happens, commencement happened.
Correct. You can't have a recommencement.
There cannot be a recommencement.
Correct.
So again, they visit after visiting, they should continuously do that audit for a period of 3 months.
True.
So look at it from the central excise experience.
Correct.
Which used to happen. Once they have started the premise, there's only a visit audit at that time.
Correct.
So I think in my understanding is, it is two different parts, depending upon the two different situations envisaged in 65 subsection 2 and cannot be read both for both. Okay.
So, sir, because of this open-ended definition, let's say somebody has breached this time limit.
Yeah.
Is it worth challenging? Is there any adverse issue you see if you, even if let's say they conclude, they will anyway issue 73, 74 within the time limit, because 73, 74 they have for 17, 18, they will have 73 up to 23 if my memory stands right. And 25 if it is under 74, 3 years and 5 years. So let's say they missed the audit timeline, but they've got the information. They've identified the issues.
67.
60. So is this audit report null and void in law, or it's not, it's worth challenging? Do you think so?
No, I cannot answer this in a straight jacket. I can only say depending upon the issue. Issue which is prima facie, nothing more needs to be established and proved in a show cause notice, fine. If something with a documentary evidence which needs to be proved, because I am seeing what is in a 73 proceeding, once there's an audit conclusion, it has a more evidential value.
Correct.
Because rather than merely a documents collected in an investigation inquiry proceedings.
Correct. True.
Because there's a third party data. Here it is the assess his own data.
Correct.
So if the audit is not completed, you can always challenge, is my view, but to where it leads, whether, you know, I think that I understand that income tax, there is already a decision which says that any evidences collected in an illegal such also is admissible under the law.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
same way here, once that information is there with him, even for the delayed thing, whether they can do, maybe there's only for them to have a checks and balances.
Correct.
Whether it will give me any substantial right, I really do not know.
I agree, sir. I don't think it does really gives too much mileage to the taxpayer to argue upon.
Yeah, true. Okay. I think more or less the points on audit we have covered, I believe. Anything
it's
specific?
6:20, sir, now. So how
Sorry?
should we? It's 6:20 now.
Yeah, I think we can say take there are a lot of questions which have come. Okay.
Yes.
Uh,
I'll read out the question, sir. You can answer it.
yes. No problem.
We'll keep the jugalbandi like this.
Okay.
So from Mr. Virendra Bhandari, department is rescinding cases which are closed after a detailed scrutiny after issuing ADT1 and denying with ADT2 by saying that a new assignment for 5 years against 3 years audit completed.
I'm not able to understand. The
I am
question.
also not able to understand, sir. Is rescinding cases?
I think maybe we'll take up the.
We'll take it up later, sir.
Later.
We'll take it up later. Is press release and clarification bound on adjudicating officers? We'll take it up in adjudication, sir. What time limit to reply audit notice? What is the time limit to complete the audit procedures? I think we have addressed that.
Yeah, the first part I want to address. What is the time limit for reply? Generally, this is a burning issue because they give 3 days, 5 days, 7 days.
Correct.
Basically, this particular process of they making an observation and communicating. Okay. And it's a part of the process of audit for the 3 months plus 1 month completion report.
Correct.
So in that process, now there may be a challenge whether the observation is given before completion of audit or after completion of audit. But obviously, in the course of audit, they would have communicated. They will have a time limit to conclude, as we were discussing. So they need to reply as far as possible. Cannot be taking extensions and time because otherwise they cannot conclude. Anyhow, having said that, if somebody do not respond to audit, what happens? Do not respond to audit queries raised, what happens? Maybe that audit query will get reported in ADT 02. Then after that, can I come out and give a replay? Is what something which we'll have to see in the adjudication because it's all depends on what is the case, how we need to handle, all those things depends. Okay.
Sir, interestingly, there is no best judgment assessment.
No.
Correct. Unlike the VAT law.
No.
Right. So can the officer say you have not produced your account, so I'll disallow all your input tax credit and issue a show cause notice? Is that a legally fair notice?
Whether fair or not, that's a notice which will be issued and is being issued also. 8002 and even 73 notice have been issued in similar fashion. Correct. You have to take a legal argument that is merely allegation without any supporting documents.
Correct.
And but again, that 155 will pitch in as far as the ITC is concerned. The burden of proof of establishing the credit is on us. Then we have to produce a lot of documents in the adjudication, which we would have closed at the time of audit itself.
Correct. True. Sir, then I'll read another question.
Yeah.
Form DRC 1A has been issued by a state and later he is moved or replaced by new recruitment. Can he reopen the case again and ask for information issuing endorsement? I think this is an adjudication point, sir. I think we'll take it later. In one of the case, CTO who is assigned a case for audit, officer says the authorization to appear for ADT1 ends once the audit is over and a fresh authorization to represent under adjudication under 733 is required. Is this correct?
Depends on the type of authorization which they would have given. If in the subject matter, they say all proceedings under this and any further proceedings in this, if the extent of the authorization will be able to define this.
Okay. Then there are some questions on show cause, so no problem. One of my client received an audit notice for 5 years. Is it valid? Is the question.
There's nothing like a periodicity and all is a discretion of the assigning officer.
Correct. I think we have addressed more of who's the author. We have addressed most of the questions, sir. I think.
Yes.
Yes. One question I missed. Who is the authority for conducting audit on accounts of the supplier? Can both state and central officers be authorized to conduct an audit? I think we have answered that, no, sir. Once somebody has stepped into audit proceeding, it debars the other from answering.
No, the supplier is himself not a registered person. That's what I am assuming.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, correct. Interesting question then. What if it's an unregistered person? Then who's the proper officer? It's not assigned to anybody?
No, that is where your 63 pitches in.
Okay.
Any person who's unregistered, if they found that it is not there, that is where section 63 lies.
So it's an assessment then.
It's an assessment. That is where they have been given a power to assess, call for, do whatever it is and do a best judgment assessment.
Or they can also, there's a power under 29, I think 29 or somewhere. I don't recollect, not 29. 25 or 26. The officer itself can issue a registration certificate and then take jurisdiction.
Yeah, that also they can do. But for the past, then short payment, non-payments, 67, they should initiate and then go to 70.
Fine. I think, sir, sir, do you want to speak, give some of your inputs on, as an auditee, what are the responsibilities and what are his rights broadly in 5-10 minutes?
I think in the process, we did say that, they can question and all those things.
Correct.
We did not, considering the time factor and other topics involved, I think we can move on to the next topic is what I believe.
Fair enough, sir. So adjudication, sir, your opening remarks, sir, on adjudication.
As I did mention that, it is different from assessment or for that matter, audit or for an investigation. In fact, like many times we say, all roads lead to Rome. Like, all the proceedings had to find, as far as the tax demand is concerned, should finally come and land between 73 or 74, as the case may be. So even if it is starting there, it has to come and finally land over here. In that context, this is where a lot of things we need to keep in mind. And having said that, everything has to get concluded as far as the final issue of order, except for the best judgment assessments under the 62 and 63. Those are the two independent proceedings which can happen independent of 73, 74. In all of the cases, it comes down for a tax demand into 73, 74 for any short payment, non-payment, wrong labeled ITC or utilization. Now, I want to, emphasize on the fact that from here, it is a quasi-judicial proceedings. Rather than looking at merely as an assessee, as a taxpayer, better to look at these proceedings from an advocate's perspective or like an advocate, where you have to look at these proceedings not to prove yourself right. I repeat, your responsibility is not to prove yourself right. Your responsibility stops on proving the notice is wrong.
Correct.
So let's not go beyond that and trying to show that how I am right. Correct. Your focus should be on what is there in the notice and addressing that. Again, many a times, it so happens, we get carried away with the earlier discussions, earlier debates, earlier conversations, starting from that officer told that is what he's asking, that is what he's talking about in the notice. No, what is there on a paper is what is there. What is not there on a paper, he would have discussed and spent and debated with you for 10 days, 15 days, 1 month on that in-depth, taken exchange papers. Don't worry about it. What has finally come on the paper is what is relevant in the form of a notice, where what is there in the notice, how it is written, what is written, and what angle it is written, based on what facts, based on what evidences. This is how we need to look at the adjudication process and not merely look into only the issue involved. Rather, beyond that is what is more important, is what I think.
Sir, so in fact, staying on this point, how should we read a notice? Can you just give us some inputs? How would you as an advocate read this notice and how we should approach a notice? How should we break it up into some segments and then address the point? Can you give some thoughts on that?
Yes, I think first of all, it is better that we read a notice at least thrice.
Okay.
That is my suggestion. First is a reading to understand what all are there in the notice.
Okay.
Because if you try to read the first reading itself thoroughly in the beginning, then something is covered there. You will not be able to correlate one with the another. So first reading, just to read through what all is there. Probably you can just mark or highlight little what is there. Because once you try to go on analyzing and digest the first reading, the subsequent portion of it may actually dilute your reading or dilute your understanding. So first read it. Second reading is where you will read it to bifurcate the contents of a notice into multiple aspects. How we need to broadly classify the issues or the, whatever the allegations or the issues framed, what are all the elements. Then the third reading, you start thinking that you are actually before the authority or a court or a tribunal, you are fighting that case and these questions are being posed. Then what are all the provisions relevant? At that time, you start framing your thought process on each of the issues while reading. Then make a notes on the third reading as to what and how your approach should be. You can make a note. This is only for reading. And when actually you go to prepare to the notices, I think I'll come back to you when I ask you that question, what you will adopt. Basically, I am telling you have to read the notice thoroughly. Now, having said that, in that, what is that we need to look? First, what are the facts? Whether the facts which has been stated in the notice are factually correct. Second, whether the sequence in which I always call it as a eventual facts or the sequential facts. That means what happened first, what happened next what happened. And generally we find something important would have happened in between, which they would have consciously omitted. Now, we should ask a client and try to get that particular fact inserted in between, and what is the relevance of those facts to the facts of the present case is also very, very important. So we need to first crystallize what has exactly happened vis-a-vis what is being stated in the notice as facts. So once the facts are clear, then based on that facts, what is the case the show cause notice is trying to make out? If we may understand it wrongly, but what exactly the notice is trying to make an allegation against me based on that fact. If the allegations are not in line with the fact which is being there, then maybe we need to mark and try to see how to address that. So allegation facts, then allegations against me. And the thirdly, the provisions invoked for that particular allegation. Is there any other provision which is relevant, which has been ignored, instead of that what has been actually applied or being referred? Then that for that allegation, is there is supporting evidence based on the fact which they're trying to bring in, and examine the evidences which are in support of the department's case, or which is what is against themselves or against me. We need to analyze the evidences. If many a times, especially the initial stages, they do not know the concept of burden of proof. The department would not try to establish a burden of proof. Presently, in many notices I have seen, they're not establishing. So if they have not established, should we get into it, or at the threshold we simply say this is being alleged without any supporting evidences and we do not agree and accept. Stop at that, because they have not laid any evidence on that. So evidences on that which is based on which they are bringing out these allegations, statutory provisions. Based on that, and again, the penalties or interest provisions, and more importantly, the quantification part. Generally, we get lost in the legal points. We miss out on the computational part, which is a quantification part, where they would have taken completely wrong figure, or their understanding is wrong in taking those figures. So effectively, we may think it's a huge issue, but actually when we relook at the factual aspect read with the computational aspect, it may come down really. So I think this is how I look at the notice when something comes like this.
Okay. So sir, if I have to summarize for the benefit of participants, one, find out the facts, reconfirm the facts if it's complete or incomplete. Two, identify which are the legal provisions the officers are invoking, and why that is right or wrong is what we need to defend. So we are more in a defensive mode, I think.
Evidence, the third one is very important.
Yes, evidence. Third
And-
is the evidence. And then fourth is what are our avowments or submissions towards this entire thing. Is, I think,
Quantification is one more.
sorry, yes, last one. The quantification is what I think we need to gather. And if the show cause notice is not self-speaking on quantification, I think we should ask for it, right?
Yeah. Again, there's a multiple approach. We simply say the quantification is without basis, incorrect, improper, therefore invalid. Stop at that. Let them come out because any order cannot be on blah blah, all those things.
Correct.
So, second thing in evidences, more importantly, one has to see what is the evidence of mine, what is third party evidence.
Okay. How would you differentiate, sir, between these two?
Third party evidence is evidence which the department has collected behind
Okay.
my back,
Okay.
which has not been placed to me for examination of that particular thing.
Okay. Okay.
Cross examination of that.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, we can actually ask for a cross examination of a third party witnesses in the adjudication proceedings.
Correct. Correct. Okay, sir. So, sir, now a question comes up. I'll give you an example which we face. The officer issues a 73 notice saying your e-way bill data shows sales of 1 crore, but you have reported only 75 lakhs in your GSTR1. I propose to tax 25 lakhs. This is all the reporters. This is what we are getting from the state also. Or to give you another example, your 2A shows 1 lakh, but you have claimed credit of 3 lakhs. I propose to disallow this much credit. Now, how should we approach these notices, sir? They are, very non-speaking. They don't give us the quantification also. So we are, as when we are, I mean, as such, we are in a dilemma whether we should, express our cooperation with the department and give all this as an evidence, or should we just tell them, you please give us the manner of calculation and then we will respond? Because the tough line or the tightrope which we walk is sometimes some officers who don't appreciate an adjudicating proceeding in such a matter, they just say, no, it is your responsibility. So therefore, I will confirm the order if you don't come up with your working. So as taxpayers and practitioners, some of them go running around and try to match what the department has put in the notice and try to justify. So how would you advise the participants here on how to approach such situations where the notices are non-speaking and more summary, just giving two numbers and throwing it to you?
Okay. I would like to address this particular question by firstly classifying the taxpayers' approach.
Okay.
There is a one set of taxpayers. Do they say, sir, I don't know whatever comes. I don't want to receive any notice or order.
Correct.
Because I can't address the management that I got so much demand order, etc. So that is the one set of thing. And genuinely, there will be no actual differences in e-way bill, etc. There will be genuine reasons. I'm only addressing that e-way bill issue differences. 2A, 3B is a different issue. We'll come to that later.
Correct.
The other set of taxpayers where they do say, sir, actually there is something. I don't want to give much information. Do whatever. I want to fight it out. Okay. If you give more data, I will be stuck. So don't give data. Is another level.
Yeah.
Third thing, sir, I leave it completely to you, sir. Whatever you say is fine.
Correct.
Because in the first scenario, you have to be firm, sir. The data which you are given is insufficient. So please provide us a furthermore reconciliation to enable us to do a reconciliation and give it. Otherwise, I'll have to give a data with available information to us only. So we'll try to do all this exercise to pro, juggleries, etc. When it comes to a legal thing, first of all, is a third party evidence. We do not know the correctness of the third party evidence. On what basis you have taken this evidence? Would like to know from the correctness of the data. All those you question the documents based on which that notice is propose, and try to say, unless you give me, I can't reply. You have to give me a sufficient opportunity. Like, many a cases in the past, we used to always say, relied upon document not supplied, so I'm not able to reply.
Right. True.
However,
It's
I'm
precise.
replying on the legal front, why it is not correct. If it only legal points, why it is not sustainable, etc.
True, true. So that's the
cannot
difference
match-
between assessment and adjudication, actually, no, sir.
Yeah,
In adjudication, you are supposed to be, the officer is expected to have all the information and supply it as part of RUDs to the person who is adjudicating. Like you said, it's a judicial proceeding, it's a quasi-judicial proceeding.
correct.
Versus an assessment where he's in a fact-finding exercise, actually.
Exactly.
He has yet not reached a conclusion.
Correct.
So I think we should enforce our right that way. And like you rightly said, we should understand the appetite of the taxpayer also. If things go out of control, what can be done?
What
So,
repercussion?
sir, then this connected point. Let's say we are advisors to the client. Now a show cause notice comes. How should we do a risk assessment of this, a SWOT analysis of? Will clients say, what is your advice? Should we contest? Should we do a pre-deposit? Should we challenge it right up to the end? So what are the parameters you would use to decide this approach, sir? This is a very critical point which we as advisors have to play. Rather than just giving them the legal point, we also need to, should we step into the shoes of the businessman and analyze the math behind this?
I think initial days of my practice, one of my seniors, gurus, who was advocate, did mention that I think being a chartered accountant, you get connected too much to the client.
Correct.
You get too much emotional with the client.
True.
So until you, depart from that, detach from that, and look at the case, you cannot look at the case. Actually, you cannot be able to look at the case in reality. So the first advice which I would suggest is, while you are looking at the SWOT analysis which you said, first of all, you get out of the shoe of anyway connected to the client to do that analysis. Then only you can analyze that particular case. If you are a part of that particular organization or attached to the client psychologically, then I think you cannot see the case independently. So that is my first thing to take. The parameters is, one, you have to be independent while you are thinking and doing an analysis. Again, your decision making or your analysis is limited to the extent of your knowledge. What is the case law development? What is the experience of others? All those things you may not know. So whether, first of all, before getting into an assessment of a strength of the case, you need to assess yourself whether you are capable of assessing the issue on hand. What is the strength or weakness of that? Because we cannot be an expert in all aspects. Say some show cause notice is issued to a client who is belonging to an healthcare sector, and whether he falls within the ambit of a clinical establishment or not. I don't think, though we may do some research, whether we will be in a position to assess that entity to be that or not, we do not know.
Yeah.
So whether we alone can do that exercise, or we need the help of other experts of relevant factors to determine. So that is the next aspect which we need to see. Third is that, again, what is the financial impact of this particular case, which the probabilities of a worst case scenario, best case scenario, and in between. That is what is one of the SWOT thing which is there. So best scenario, worst scenario, where do we stand? What is the spread between the two, and how much it would be impacting a particular organization is what we generally look at it. Vis-a-vis, then, is there any possibility to arrest that particular risk partially or fully? How do we see that particular thing? Today, with the GST, in my reading and understanding, nothing can be conclusively said that this is going to be like this.
Correct.
Today we would have given an opinion. Tomorrow they come and say retrospectively this is amended. We can't.
Correct.
Because the intention, because how many clubs and association we have given opinion, there's a possibility that the mutuality is applicable, therefore there cannot be any tax. Suddenly they come out and say that, retrospectively it is treated as a supply and you have to pay tax from the beginning. So that risk factor also is there, but at the same time they cannot afford to pay that huge amount which they have been demanded. So that factor is something which we should always look at it. And finally, the capacity to bear that element of financial thing by the entity, whether they can bear if it comes. And the last but not the least, the risk appetite of that particular taxpayer. In fact, this quantum thing, I did say, a very old experience of mine, where the security agency in the service tax regime, the demand was few crores.
Okay.
That person was not taken aback at all. We said, why? Sir, even if they come and ask, they will not get 20 lakh. You are talking about 5 crores. There's no question of, me paying. Even if they come, they can't take anything from me. So leave it. So I'm telling, ability to pay is a factor. Even if they come, then I have to shut my doors and go, then okay, let me enjoy till then. Whenever it happens, I'll be enjoying the
ability of the department to recover also.
In fact, today morning I was reading some report on the WhatsApp. They were telling that how much loan has been written off in the FY 21-22, 1,70,000 crores something has been written off. Out of further around 34 crores of a previous written off has been recovered. So like that, how much of tax dues will be written off, we do not know.
Correct.
Yeah, I
Sir,
think these are.
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt.
I think these are the factors I would see, and many a times this tax payment interest deferment is also one of the options many of them consider, because the interest is being arrested. The quantum of interest gets arrested. The tax amount is paid. If I subsequently succeed, I will get the refund. Is also a factor. But how do we pay? Whether we reverse, all those factors has to be looked into depending on case to case.
Sir, I have another question. We had a concept of pre-consultation show cause in central excise and service tax. Now in GST, we have this DRC 1A proceeding.
Correct.
What do you think is the scope of this pre-consultation? Is it an empty formality, or we as a taxpayer, as a consultant, how should we enforce our rights in a DRC or pre-consultation proceeding, what we call DRC 01A? I'm presuming all the participants know the sequence. There is something called a DRC 1A where they quantify the liability. They don't really go down to the allegations and detailed provisions. The actual show cause which comes is in the form of DRC 1, which is the show cause notice under section 73 or 74. So before, so there is this practice where they issue DRC 1A where they quantify a liability on a particular issue. So the question to Rajesh sir is, as a taxpayer, when I get a DRC 1A, what should I address? What should I look into? And what should I submit? If at all I should submit anything.
Okay. Firstly, I think I would like to make a distinction between restwhile pre-consultation vis-a-vis intimation of a quantification of 73.5 or 74.5.
Okay.
There is no concept of pre-ASN consultation in GST.
Okay.
Whereas in the restwhile thing, there was a pre-show cause notice consultation through a circular.
Correct.
Above certain limits.
Correct.
In fact, they made it a mandatory for intimating a quantification in GST. Then they amended it to be an optional.
Correct.
Essentially, the mechanism is, since there's a provision of 73, if somebody does not want to get into litigation, and also there's a provision where it says if you pay before issue of a notice, the reduced penalty or a no penalty scenarios are there. The government felt it appropriate that an opportunity be given to the taxpayer to comply and get that benefit, and also government gets its revenue. Now, having said this, Now the question is, what should be my approach when I get DRC 01A? Many of us, I think at least when we are seeing nowadays, first audit observation comes, we reply to the thing, same thing will reply. That will again come in 8002. Generally 8002 people will need not reply, but still companies insist, so we reply the same thing again.
Correct.
The same thing again will be there in the DRC 01A quantification. Again, we are tend to reply the same thing again. Again, they issue a show cause notice. Again, we will going to reply the same thing and attend a personal hearing.
Same answer, same result.
Though I said this, now the question is, why I brought out this is there a approach or is there a psychology of the authority to accept our explanation? If they are not ready to accept our application, our submissions, then is it worth doing it is one factor. Also, strategically, should we bring out our all the points now?
Correct.
Because strategically, if the department is going wrong, I repeat, if the department is going in a wrong track,
Correct.
instead of classifying a particular activity as a supply of goods rather than treating a supply of service and trying to issue a notice and making a big demand against that, let them go ahead with the same thing and issue a show cause notice, because order cannot go beyond the scope of show cause notice. Similarly, majority cases, they're getting confused with the credit note under section 34 vis-a-vis the reversal to be done against the credit note by the recipient.
Correct.
They are mixing the provision and issuing the audit notes. So like that, if they're on wrong track, I suggest simply write, we reiterate the submissions which are made earlier and we request to kindly consider all those points is one. But I emphasize that if there's any quantification error, try to bring out if it is advantageous you at the stage of DRC 01A.
True.
Because that is a quantification statement. So if you have any objection to it, better bring the objection to the quantification at the stage of DRC 01A, though not leaving all the other issues open on the merits of the case. Quantification can bring out the supporting documents if you want to bring it.
True, sir. I think very rightly put. We should not lead them to correcting their errors. We should use our professional judge skill here actually on this. Like you rightly said, so as a practice, I thought I'll just share for the benefit of participants is when we get an audit observation, generally we only look at the facts. Factually, what the officer is saying is right or wrong, and we give evidences to say if that fact is incorrectly understood. But we don't really go into citations and giving detailed legal submissions. So our conclusion will always be in one line. In fact, most of my audit responses, we just say agree or disagree. That's it. We don't write anything else. Audit para 1, agree. Audit para 2, disagree. Audit para 3, disagree. That's what we do as such. We don't really go into too much, legal submissions, because that may only improve his show cause notice. The weaker the show cause notice, the better we are. Because I know when we brief Rajesh sir, his eyes become wide open when he sees a weak show cause notice. So you can see some brightness in his eye. So this is a typical, and this generally those practicing at higher levels, they are looking more for, such loopholes to, sail the case through. So, I think we should not lead them, like rightly said by Rajesh sir. In pre-consultation, I think we should focus only on quantification, because it's the same person. He has made up his mind, he's going to issue a show cause. I have not seen a case where somebody has dropped a show cause at pre-consultation. I don't know, sir. I don't know if your experience also.
No. I have also.
It's an empty formality. So our legal submission should only take in place after the show cause has been issued. Right, sir? Okay.
In fact, I think one point at this stage, I suddenly remembered a recent instance where a show cause notice was issued. we filed a reply to the show cause notice.
Hmm.
Then we got a revised show cause notice.
Okay. In fact,
Countering the points which we took out in the reply to show cause notice.
okay.
Now I want to ask, is it valid?
In fact, sir, I wanted to, in this part of the session, I am questioning you. You are not questioning me.
Okay.
So I will thank you first for the question. And now I will ask you the same question, bounce it back to you as a Federer backhand shot. So now you have to answer it.
Yeah, I think, in fact, there are few decisions in the past that the department cannot improvise their case based on the reply submitted.
Correct.
At the same time, there are also few case laws which says that show cause notices with a corrigendums, etc., can be issued. This is nothing but like a revision.
Correct.
However, the corrigendum, merely a typographical error, will have a retrospective impact.
Correct.
But if any corrigendum which changes the essence of the notice, then to that extent it is a independent fresh notice. The time limit has to be counted
Once
till
again.
the date of that particular.
Correct.
The new corrigendum as the date of issue of notice. Now,
Correct.
since in this case it is well within that particular period, so I think that is what is we need to know. But
Right.
obviously we can use this. I mean, we'll put up for objection and see what happens.
So if I have to now answer your question, borrowing your inputs, if it is a simple error on the face of the record, it can be done through a corrigendum. Time limit need not be rechecked. But if it is a new ground or a new case they are making, then it should be treated at par with a fresh show cause notice, even though they may be calling it corrigendum by way of nomenclature. And we check the time limit once again and check the jurisdiction once again. Okay, yes, sir. So I hope I've answered your question satisfactorily.
Yeah.
Sir, there is one question, sir, very interesting actually. In fact, a lot of them file this DRC 03 through this. I mean, it's somewhat like a dispute resolution. This DRC 03. Now, in fact, I wanted your expert inputs on this. They have this drop down there, voluntary, pursuant to audit. Okay, there is nothing called pre-deposit. That's another big, Pandora's box which we need to address. So, two questions I have for you. One, is there an estoppel once I file a DRC 03 that I cannot contest the matter voluntarily, let's say? That's one question for you. Second is, if I have issued a DRC 03, let's say, can I revise it? These are the two questions which are there. There is in fact one question on the chat box also. I'm addressing one of them.
Yeah, okay. This DRC 03 is a mechanism where you are coming out with a payment other than in the normal course of return filing.
Correct.
They're obviously given options.
Yes.
Options you would have chosen consciously or mistakenly.
With a gun behind my head also.
That's the next part I'm coming to. Okay. Third is at the behest of the authorities. Okay. There have been a umpteen number of cases earlier that if it is paid at the instance of the authorities, you can always consider it to be a deposit in a protest.
Correct.
But nothing come, just a oral call, you never knew, or you thought that, okay, I will pay.
Correct.
So those places, even if you have paid, you can always say it was a clerical mistake.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's a portal thing. You always error, but ideally you cannot sleep over it. If you are waking up at least after 3 years, I mean after 3 months, 6 months, better I write on letter and keep it. No, actually this has happened a mistake. It is on immediately being pointed out, you get say, no, that was actually meant to be like this since we thought. That's the first question. Next thing you are asked about the
revision. Revision of the DRC.
No,
revision of the DRC.
Revision of the DRC, there is no mechanism provided.
No mechanism.
That's
so let's say
you can write a letter to consider this as this.
Okay.
Third, you talked about a deposit, pre-deposit option not there.
Correct.
This aspect read with the latest circular and the mechanism of filing the appeal which is set out in the portal, they consider the pre-deposit as an independent deposit beyond what has been deposited.
Correct.
And the appeal is not getting filed online unless you make a separate independent deposit through a
10%.
mechanism of filing an appeal and
Correct.
not through DR03.
We are facing this issue.
Yeah, many a time it would have happened. Physically, the order came today. You earlier 6 cases you had already filed physical appeal, which was
Correct.
admitted because there's not. Now you thought that this is also like that. You filed a physical DR03 within a prompt. You're a prompt consultant, so you filed within 1 week time promptly. They uploaded that particular thing after 10 days.
Correct.
Now you cannot upload the details of this DRC03 online to file that appeal. The appeal doesn't proceed itself for filing it online. So your appeal is as good as not lodged.
Correct.
So there is a difficulty where in a grievance cell you can always say, so before making a pre-deposit through DR03, please look at it online whether it is uploaded or not. Then you write one grievance to the thing that is not uploaded. So we are forced to file a manual thing so it can come handy at a later point in time. And I was seeing some decision or something where there was a thing, electronically doesn't mean only through portal, even email is electronically.
Yes.
So you can use this. I send it by mail, so it's also filed electronically. So with all the things with a digital signature, so under the IT Act also it is admitted as a proper submission through an online filing. So I think you can look at that as an alternate.
Please don't give ideas, otherwise you'll have people saying Instagram, WhatsApp is also electronic.
Okay.
Fine. Sir, then would you want to address the point of what is the outer time limit for adjudication, and for 73 and 74, what are the short differences, sir? Quickly,
Yeah,
because
I would like to address that specifically. Before that, you also did mention, and also the usage of the words DRC03 is a note, so DS01 is a notice. No, please be corrected. DRC01 is merely a summary of show cause notice. It is not a show cause notice. So there should be an independent show cause notice other than DRC01. So where it says a show cause notice shall be issued and a summary of the show cause notice has to be uploaded in form DRC01 in the portal. So that is what the provision talks about. So please be aware there should be an independent of DRC01 and separate a show cause notice. This is one point which we need to note. Because the time limit factor, many a times you would have got only a summary but not the show cause notice. Service of a notice when it comes, how it is, what this section talks about. So sometimes it comes handy to look at these minute differences which is there beyond what we understand generally. Okay, so this is one thing. Coming to section 73 and 74. 73, as we have already seen in a case of other than fraud, suppression of facts to evade tax, willful misstatement of facts to evade tax. I repeated few words for both of this. This is how we need to read. It is not merely stops at willful misstatement, because willful misstatement is hanging in air unless it is coupled with the facts, and facts will be hanging in air without a further words to evade tax. So it has to be read like that: fraud, willful misstatement of facts to evade tax, suppression of facts to evade tax. Though there is a definition of a word suppression at a later part, mere suppression is not sufficient because the provision uses the word suppression to evade tax. So the suppression coupled with the intention is a necessity to move from 73 to 74. This is very, very important, which we need to understand. Presently, I think state is gracious enough in all the cases they only invoke 73, they go into 74. At the same time, maybe I may be not using appropriate word. Center is too greedy to invoke in all the cases 74 with in audit especially without actually considering the fact that there can be a 73, especially RCM liability where I would have taken a credit.
Correct.
So I think that is where one of the aspects which we need to be making differentiation about. Next, coming to this time limit, there are two different aspects. One is the time limit to pass order, then time limit to issue notice. Time limit to issue order, it says 3 years. 3 years from when? Again, 73 covers a situation where short payment of tax, non-payment of tax, wrongly availed credit, wrongly utilized credit, erroneous refund. Now, while looking into the time period, the first 4 scenarios are differently to be seen vis-a-vis the last one. As far as the first 4 is concerned, the time limit is dependent upon the date of due date for filing annual return or the filing of annual return. Okay. Whereas for the refund, it is the actual date of refund. From there, we need to count. So many of us are not looking at this distinction. So please look at this distinction for the counting of the time limit. Now, if you look at this time limit, the first 4, 3 years from the due date of filing your annual return, first 4 scenarios. Now, the government came out, extended for 17-18. Instead of that day, whenever it was falling, they've extended up to September 23. Under section 73. 74, they are not extended. Please note. The extension is only under 73, not under 74. So that has been extended to up to that particular date of September 23. That is a date to complete or pass an order. So show cause notice should be issued at least 3 months before the concluding date. That is the provision under section 73. Now, whereas for the refund part, that the last 5th scenario which I did mention, this September 23 extension is not applicable. There's a separate clause for it, which deals with and says the time period between March 2020 and February 2022, up to that, will be excluded. So effectively 2 years extension is given. So whatever the date of refund, add 3 years. In between, if this period is coming in, you exclude that period for counting. So effectively it comes to almost 4 years, 16 months, whatever that months, minus 3 months is the due date for issue of notice. Now, at this stage, I would like to bring into the knowledge of the participants one of the Supreme Court decision in case of Uttam Steels, where it talks about how to read the law of limitation, where it says law of limitation is a procedural law. However, the government can come out with express provision making it retroactive. Okay. However, such amendment or whatever it brings in cannot give life to a dead case. So before the amendment came in, already the time limit has lapsed. Then the provision, the amendment, can it give a life to a dead case? I think that decision says no. This can go either way. In a case of refunds also, they have extended for claiming a refund, where I think it can go against SSC. In a demand cases, it can be used to the SSC. So be aware of this decision of Uttam Steel. This is what I think I have addressed the aspect of 77.4, the distinction, etc.
Yes, sir. Sir, I think now I just wanted your suggestion. we've covered most of our questions. Should we
Yeah.
take participants' questions now?
Yes, yes. I think we can cover that. Participants' questions we will address, then we'll go to the last part of our session on the practical aspect of drafting, etc.
Yes, sir. Form DRC 1A has been issued by the Deputy Commissioner of a state and later he's moved or replaced by a new recruitment. Can he reopen the case again for asking for information during adjudication proceeding? If not, how should we address this situation? Basically, his question is, can they ask new information, and if we want to, counter that, how do we counter that?
Yeah, we are actually address that particular thing in different manner, though. What I said is that no, can he do a further thing? Basically, DS01A would have been as a consequence of an audit, because if it's a change of officer in all the state, generally that is where it's happening. So where the calls for records. So actually, it is he cannot reopen the audit. The provisions of the audit does not permit for reopening of an audit. So in that case, you can say that you cannot reopen an audit. So therefore, you cannot ask any more questions. Can be answered. You can write it politely. I don't think that under section 65, there can be a further proceedings on this.
Sir, I had this issue. I had the occasion. Can an JC open an audit in SMR proceeding? I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Section 108, revision proceedings, it says any commissioner or joint commissioner can, if he believes that any decision or order passed by his subordinate is erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of the revenue, and it is illegal or improper or not taken into account certain facts, can stay or direct further inquiry. So can an audit proceeding be reopened by way of an SMR, what we call in VAT, revision proceedings by a JC?
In fact, when I was taking a session in the Bangalore branch itself on this topic of revision, I did address this.
Okay.
My reading of it, of a decision order, is that audit report is merely a report of a conclusion of a findings, not a decision or order.
Okay.
Is not adjudicating. There's no personal hearing in audit. Please note.
Correct.
So there's no opportunity of hearing all those things. So hence, in my understanding, it is not falling within the term decision or order, and also law that is also not designed in that way.
Sir, then I think there are some questions on ASMT. I think we'll say out of syllabus because I am not prepared. So
starting, we missed some questions. We are covering those also.
I am trying to cover, sir. What is the procedure to conclude DRC 1 issued by the officer based on ASMT? What could be the options available to the officer if he has wrongly issued DRC 1A without considering a reply? So I think we have addressed, sir. ADT has been issued. I think there are some questions on credit note. I will skip that because they are not part of the session. Can department directly issue DRC 1A without issuing DRC 1 without issuing DRC 1A? I think we have addressed.
Yeah, there is a possibility to do that.
Yes, yes. Now, any time limit for reply of SCN? I think up to PH 3, they can take 3 adjournments. So within that, they have to pass they have to reply. Is there any amnesty scheme? I think we'll skip that question.
Likely to come, we are expecting, we are praying, we are making representation. All the efforts we are putting to see to it that amnesty scheme comes up. Let's see what happens.
Correct. I think we have addressed, sir, right? There are some people who have raised hands. Do we have the option to hear them? Or I don't know, sir. Sir, anybody from the
branch, I don't know, technical team. Anyhow, I think we will cover the rest of the things, and if there's anything which we'll take up at the end. I think the last topic which is there, which we need to talk about is practically what are the points we need to consider while drafting the reply. I think we discussed so many things. I always believe whatever you know, whatever you understand, whatever you talk is of no relevance unless you put it on a paper.
True.
So we would have analyzed a lot of things, we would have messaged, we would have made notes. Finally, if it is not put on a paper in the form of a reply at the right time, before the right authority with the right supporting documents, I think will not serve the purpose. So in that direction, I want Rishabh for you to just bring in your input or a guidelines or a do's and don'ts as to what it is. And I think one question I saw, what should be the preparedness for the audit? What are the tips for audit? We'll address after this question later. Rishabh, you're not able to hear. You're mute.
Yeah, it is your generosity. You're asking me to answer this because you're, a master at this. But from my approach, what we generally do is we try to first document what are the facts which are undisputed. We write that. So, sorry, I skipped a step. We actually first summarize the allegation which the department is making in the show cause. So generally, center, they are well drafted. State, of course, it's a treasure hunt. It's a treasure hunt. So center, they generally say, kindly, show cause why this section should not be invoked to deny so-and-so input tax credit, or why this is not taxable under section 7 read with 9 of the CGST, SGST. So they generally give us the, way in which they have invoked a provision. So we need to first document what is the allegation. Then we go on to facts. I would generally draft down what are the facts which are undisputed, because we need to freeze that before the officer. These are the undisputed facts. This is what was submitted during audit and was also accepted. So we need to, if there is any disputed fact, we need to first address that before going on to the legal aspect. And that is where the onus is on us. We need to prove by way of evidence why the fact which is being stated by the officer is incorrect. So, I have an agenda today. I just had a hearing. They said in the show cause that you have claimed credit of so-and-so in the GSTR 3B return, which is inadmissible. So I responded in the show cause by saying the fact itself is under dispute, because we have very clearly stated to the audit authorities, this is not input tax credit. This was actually credit note, which is wrongly reported under input tax credit. And this is why these are the evidences for that. So I think we need to first set the record straight by saying these facts are under dispute, and this is why we believe it is under dispute. Then we need to I generally don't, of course, everybody has a different practice. It's an art, what we call drafting. I generally don't extract and transpose the sections, because everybody has an act today, unless there is some really pressing need for it. So generally we only quote the sections and say this is the reasons, this is why the section has to be broken up. Like just we discussed, if I have to say something is beyond audit, I will say section 218 defines what the scope of audit is. It can be divided into 3 parts: examination, verification, and conclusion. Transition credit, for example, is not part of any of the provisions. So that's why we believe that the audit is beyond, something like that. So, as an example, we need to analyze a provision, break it down into pieces so that it's easy for somebody to understand it. Do not presume that the officer knows your mind. Rajesh sir rightly said, unless it's on paper, it's not known for anybody. So you need to put down your thoughts in a very crisp and simple English and put down those legal propositions what you have. So coming to the point, identify the legal proposition which you're challenging, because that is once you freeze the legal proposition, what we have before high courts, actually it's a practice we should apply even in show cause. You need to frame the question or the legal proposition. For the benefit of participants, I would like to tell, when you're before the high court, you need to frame the question of law before them. And if it's facts, you need to put down, of course, before the tribunal, what are the facts in dispute. So these are 2 critical things which play a large role and go a long way if the matter is taken up at higher levels. So you need to frame that this is the proposition or the dispute which has been raised by the officer, frame that question, and then give your submission. Submission 1, this section is not applicable because so and so. This word means so and so. These are the reasons why we believe, and these are the parallel provisions or ancillary provisions which give us the reason why this interpretation. I'm sorry, I missed one point. If you are challenging jurisdiction, you have to do it at the first instance. If it is geographical jurisdiction, or if it is, there is a section where if you have to challenge jurisdiction, pecuniary jurisdiction, you have to challenge it at first instance. So always place an objection that you have a jurisdictional challenge for so and so region. It may be dead letter. You may believe that it is not really logical, but challenge it. You never know. If the law evolves tomorrow, the counsel who is arguing for you at a higher level has the benefit of it. Nobody can say that, this was not challenged at an initial stage. So, there is one proposition. I know it's maybe incorrect, but whether the extended due date of annual return can be used for calculating 3 years and 5 years is a proposition. We don't know. As of today, it may seem, it's a very stupid argument, but there is no harm recording it in your show cause, saying that, no, I challenge the time limit because we believe original date should apply, extended date should not apply. For whatever it's worth, it may not help you. But tomorrow, let's say if you have Rajesh sir who argues before High Court and he succeeds and he gets as a matter like this.
I'm not getting to High Court. I am only considering myself prisoner.
So then we will take the advantage of that. So, I mean, so always keep in mind, jurisdiction should be checked and challenged at the first instance. Check for time limitation, recompute, recalculate, recheck whether the time limit is correct. Because if there is time limit is crossed, don't worry. Just go to Rajesh sir's office. He will file a WP for us. So if it's time limit, don't even have to worry on merits, but be very sure on time limit. Then a very interesting point Rajesh sir also pointed out. This is the opportunity for you to make an alternative claim. By alternative claim, what do we mean? Let's say it's a 73 notice. You have an RCM liability. Make a claim. Okay, fine. Give me the credit for whatever I have paid. I'm entitled for credit. Or let's say there's an exemption. You have claimed exemption under an entry. If they're disallowing under that exemption entry, you believe there's some other wider exemption entry which you can fall under. Make that alternative claim. Let's say they have imposed 18%. You have charged 5. Okay, but you believe, okay, if not 5, it's at the max 12, not 18. Make that alternative claim. So basically what I'm trying to say is you need to make that alternative claim for that to form part of the proceeding. If you do not make that claim in the adjudication proceeding, nobody can help you. It otherwise goes into a vicious circle. It has to come back by way of remand, and that only increases your lifespan of that proceeding. So make as many alternative claims as you can in the show cause. Cum tax is a very important thing which we miss out. If the department is imposing tax for a tax which you have not collected, you can seek for a cum tax benefit actually under the law. And ultimately, I would generally approach any show cause, check any show cause with taxability with first, whether it's within the definition, 2, whether there is a rate prescribed or an exemption, 3, which is the governing act, CGST or IGST based on place of supply. I had this issue, sir. URD for an office in Maharashtra is being imposed by way of show cause in Karnataka. I said, this is not a scope of the Karnataka authorities at all. So you're out at the threshold.
Territorial jurisdiction.
Territorial jurisdiction. So you need to put that objection before the officer. Then check for valuation, a quantification, like Rajesh sir said. Check for time of supply, because they generally impose interest from any date. You need to clarify, saying that no, the time of supply is so and so date, and therefore interest, if at all is there, is so and so. And then make your final conclusive arguments on suppression, penalty, interest. Like if you are paid to credit, you can always make a claim that interest is not applicable because you had a credit claim for so and so period and you are now discharging it under protest. So these are broadly how quickly I have summarized. It comes out of experience, of course, and we all have to start somewhere. So it's a trial and error, because like we say drafting is more an art. It's not a scientific formula, and we have to improvise from that. Sir, if I missed, can you add
I
anything?
think a couple of points I want to supplement. One is that particular classification. Classification I've come across, majorly people have not understood the concept of classification under the GST. This is my experience.
Yes.
Majorly. When I talk about classification, everybody straight away opens notification 1 or 2 or 11 or 12 directly. Approach is not that. My suggestion is first you go back and look at the notification, look at the first schedule of the Customs Tariff Act. First, classify your goods at the appropriate classification. What is a 8-digit code at therein? Then you identify, freeze the classification first. Then come back with that classification and identify the exact entry in this notification. It is not here to there, there to here, where then you may actually find, in services also, the explanatory notes given for the, by UN, which is actually published in CBIC website. I invite your attention to go through that explanatory notes and first identify where your service do fall first.
Correct.
Then based on that, you come back into the respective notification and try to classify whether what has been alleged against you. In fact, many notice they have not even mentioned the classification.
Correct.
So that should be one of the objections.
Correct.
So I think that classification part you need to take care. One.
Yeah.
Two, in fact, Rishabh did mention there'll be notices from center, notices from the state. If you have got both, put across.
Yes.
What is there in center, what is not in the state? First, make a list and raise that itself as an basis of objection. You're not alleged this, you're not done this, you're not given this. Therefore, this notice is invalid. So that is one way of looking at, that aspect of it. And when you are talking about this exemption being claimed, suddenly a thought process came. Many of the contractors, the notices are being issued saying that you being a subcontractor, you are not eligible for the exemption.
Correct.
Suddenly one client came and they said, sir, this is what they're saying. I said, ask, what are you actually doing? Sir, I do to local authority, so and so service. I said, what is the material involved? Sir, I do only maintenance. Material value is very nominal. Then you are actually eligible for full exemption.
Correct.
Why are you paying 12%?
Correct.
They're paying some, they said 12 versus 18. I said, you are completely exempted, but you are paying 12%. But that also has a backfiring.
Correct.
Because under the GST, when any exemption is there, you can't collect tax and avail credit. So that also is there. So look at all those things when you are actually deciding. One way, if you actually go ahead and claim, there may be a backfiring possibility. Also look at the backfiring aspect of it. And there are a couple of questions in the chat box rather than question answers. One was, what are the main things we have to consider while doing an audit? It's a general question. Second, we talked about 73-74. If the department are doing, is any case law for this differential treatment? Is a question. You have anything to say on that? You can just address after that.
So which question I'm not able to?
No, that's there in the chat box. Last.
Okay.
No, from the last, there are 3 questions. Some Mr. Kiran has raised one 99C out of syllabus, so I left it. While we are doing audit, what are the main things we have to consider? Again, it's a audit from an auditor perspective. What, in fact, at the threshold, Rishabh said, what we do is not all audit, we only do a reconciliation certification if we are doing. But this is a very different topic in itself. I think we can't be able to address. Generally, you look at all the aspects where there can be a possible errors. They can keep a common errors list and check whether those errors have happened. Can only a simple tips I can tell at this stage. 70-74 people are, if they invoke 74, you can always question that, say that that has not been established, and with a lot of case laws available. One, in fact, Jain irrigation as per the reverse charge mechanism, so in the service tax regime, which were again, I think Jet Airways, one more decision on the reverse charge mechanism. There cannot be intention to evade payment of tax, where 74 cannot be invoked, 73 can be invoked. So like this, there are many, depends on each of the facts and circumstances we can say. In fact, one important case which I would like to highlight for your benefit is that is Nizam Sugar, Supreme Court, where it says that in the subsequent proceedings on the same set of facts, there cannot be allegation of suppression of facts.
Correct.
Because all the facts are known when the first notice is issued. In the subsequent notice, it cannot be said there is a suppression. So these are some things which you can keep in handy while you are preparing your reply. Any other question or raising of hands? I think we can address. Otherwise, I think there's one last question which I would like to ask. After the order, what I should do?
It's there in the chat box. Is it okay? What is
No, not there. No, this is in our agenda.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Application, if order comes,
Correct.
how do we proceed? How do we look at it?
Sir, if you can answer that.
Yeah, I'll address that. Okay. Firstly, many a times we are only concerned with the last page, last paragraph, whether the demand is dropped or confirmed.
Correct.
Again, if it is confirmed, what extent confirmed? I think maybe that is not a suggested good practice. The reason being, there may be some findings which is against. I'll tell an example. They raised a demand on the point that your classification of a goods was this, should be this, not this. However, we find it is exempted under so and so entry. This is what is the order. Accordingly, demand dropped. Unfortunately, that exemption is withdrawn in the subsequent period. And you are not filed an appeal against that.
Correct.
You will be in a worse position because you have admitted the proposition of a classification which is against you.
Correct.
In the subsequent period, whether there's another legal question will come, whether it can act as an estoppel or not, is a subsequent proceedings, different proceedings, all those are legal. Unnecessarily, if you are getting into a territory where unnecessarily you are getting into a problem. So don't only look at the conclusion portion, you better look at various, all the findings given, any findings for, any findings against, you can always look at and try to cover what was your submission, what was the analysis, what is against, it is favorable, it is not favorable, to what extent is favorable, what extent is not favorable, what action you need to take, you will have to see that, and then only you should think of proceeding. Next is concerned, in this scenario, I generally come across when the order comes, mostly there will be, not mostly, in substantial cases, there will be change of counsel. They may think that this person has not handled it correctly. I am not looking at from the person who has handled it, I am looking from the person to whom it is going. Many of the facts whom the person who is handling it afresh would not be aware factually because he's having only a limited information on his hand. So ideally, you really see, is there something which you can do a additive work rather than simply taking any such thing comes, or you can see whether you can work together with the old person, convincing the taxpayer that it is not suggestible to just ditch the old person, the person who was handling, because many of the important key facts might get stuck or may not get passed on. Knowledge may not get passed on. The approach and the why something would have not been taken at that stage, maybe strategically something would have been kept within the armor to be used next stage. All those factors might not have been coming out so clearly. Ideally, continuation of a proceedings in the subsequent stage is very, very important, is what my experience and suggestion. I think these are the points I thought I will share, Rishabh.
Yes, sir. I think, sir, I mean, that's it from our side. I think we would like to hand over the
Pramod,
proceedings to.
I think Pramod has joined. I think but he has raised hands. I don't know how to address it. If there's anything, can you just suggest Pramod? Pramod is there or I don't know.
Hello, ಹೇಳಿ sir.
Srinivas,
ಹೇಳಿ sir.
some of them have raised hand ansate. I don't know whether we'll be
Yes,
able
sir.
to address them. Rishabh, have they raised? You said somebody has raised.
There are some participants who have raised hands, but we do not know how to address them.
Illa, see whoever raised, they raised in Q&A, they have sent a question. Chat
Oh.
also they have sent questions. We can directly take questions from them.
We have addressed, sir. All those questions we have addressed.
Addressed. Oh, okay, only that.
Yes. Yes.
I think more or less we have addressed majority points. Hopefully, any further questions, if they can accepting you. Okay, there's one last question which in fact Rishabh asked, but we don't address about 3B 2A differences. Let me tell you, there's no answer. Department accepting or not accepting is their prerogative. We are here only to put across our points. Let me tell you that the department, even at Junain cases, are not accepting. So, some cases, this issue of 2A, 3B should get resolved at a national level by appropriate clarification or amendment. We have to wait and see. One more major issue which is going across is 16.4 issue. Again, we are waiting some clarity from the from the government side only.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Conclude, Madana, sir.
Yeah, I think we have addressed all the issues, I believe, Srinivas.
Okay, sir. I thank you for an excellent session. All the members actively participated and so many questions has been raised, and I'm seeing in chat also, and personally I'm getting messages. It's an excellent session because it is a need of the hour. They are saying, really, I thank both Rajesh Kumar sir and Rishabh Singhvi for taking such an effort to address all our members and practical queries. I thank on behalf of Bangalore branch of ICA for T.R. Rajesh Kumar and Rishabh Singhvi. Thank you, sir.
I think, Srinivas, we should thank you for conducting so wonderful programs, addressing the requirement of the members. The entire committee of the Bangalore branch is doing a wonderful job. In fact, presently I'm sitting in Salem branch. I was addressing the members here. In fact, I should acknowledge that the chairman of Salem branch was also acknowledging the efforts which are being taken by Bangalore branch for conducting very good programs. And they in fact said, we are adopting many of the programs which are being conducted by Bangalore branch here as well. I think so. I need to congratulate and thank the entire team for that.
Thank you, sir. We
Thank
can
you.
do whatever we can do with the support of speakers and knowledge hub of Bangalore, sir. That's what I can say. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you for this opportunity once again. It was a learning for us. I learned a lot from this, and I hope we did some justice to the entire thing, sir.
Yes, sir.
I also thank all the members for active participation. Thank you. Hope
Thank
to
you.
see you on 23 and 24th. We have a 2 days conference. I wish to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy journey, sir.
Thank you, Srinivas. Thank you, Pramod. Bye.